In this module, we're going to discuss managing the MiniTeam workbooks, including creating the workbooks, later collecting them back from the MiniTeams, and importing the MiniTeam inputs into the Master Appraisal workbook. Now that we've identified our teams and assigned process areas to them in the MiniTeam Management panel, we can create our MiniTeam workbooks. We can create our MiniTeam workbooks by pushing this button, labeled Create MiniTeam Workbooks. When we push this button, we'll create a subdirectory right below our current workbook location, our appraisal specific directory, and produce the workbooks for the MiniTeams that we've identified. So let's do that. As I said, we've created a folder called MiniTeam Workbooks under our current directory, the directory that houses the Master Appraisal Workbook for this, our current appraisal. You could click No now if you didn't want to go look at the MiniTeam Workbooks just yet, but let's go ahead right now and open that subdirectory. As you can see, we're in our appraisal specific directory, which is just called Appraisal for purposes of this training, and a subdirectory called MiniTeam Workbooks, containing a workbook for each of our 6 MiniTeams, which you can now distribute to them. Now, especially because I named the MiniTeams MiniTeam 01, MiniTeam 02, and so on, I want to highlight that the file names of the MiniTeam workbooks reflect the MiniTeam number and not the MiniTeam name. So at this point at least, the file names of the MiniTeam workbooks will always be MiniTeam 01, MiniTeam 02, etc., as you see here, regardless of the MiniTeam names you assigned. If you named MiniTeam 5 the Tigers or something, the file name of the Tigers MiniTeam workbook is going to be MiniTeam 05. To start with, at any rate, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Meanwhile, you may recall that we assigned, for example, MiniTeam 1 with PAs OPD, OPF, and OT. So let's look at the MiniTeam 1 workbook. And we see that they have a reference tab which accompanies all the MiniTeam workbooks, as well as tabs for OPD, OPF, and OT. And those tabs show SEPG only as the sole SG to be reviewed. Now let's look at the MiniTeam 5 workbook. MiniTeam 5 has been assigned RSKM, VAR, and VAL. Let's check. The MiniTeam 5 workbook has the reference tab and the PA tabs for RSKM, VAR, and VAL, and the PA tabs show the projects applicable to those PAs. You'll also note that the MiniTeam workbooks do not have a section for OU characterization, organizational unit characterization. That's to be done in the master workbook, and there's no use anyway confusing folks about where they should be entering their findings. In all other respects, though, the PA tabs are the same as in the master workbook. We discussed the PA worksheets in detail, their structure, use, and annotation in a separate training module. So let's say your MiniTeams have done their work and you've collected their inputs here on this flash drive. And now you want to import their input into the master workbook. You can do this by using these 2 buttons. This button, labeled Collect MiniTeam Input, will create a subdirectory called MiniTeam Input under the MiniTeam Workbooks directory. And under the MiniTeam input directory, it will create a further date timestamped subdirectory as the actual repository to make it easy to understand when you collected the data from the MiniTeams. It wouldn't matter really to the import procedure if we did not create this date timestamp repository. We could just as well import directly from the flash drive. But it's worthwhile keeping the MiniTeam inputs under control, especially if they're collected multiple times during the appraisal. Let me do something here for illustrative purposes. I'm going to open up the input from MiniTeam 5, and in verification under, let's say, here under Project A, SP 1.2, we'll just change this MiniTeam characterization to not yet implemented. So it stands out here in blue, and make a note, as I said, for illustrative purposes. And save it on the flash drive. And now I'll also rename this updated file to Tigers Rev1. Your MiniTeams will likely modify the file names that you initially gave them to indicate ownership or versioning and revisioning anyway. And it doesn't matter in terms of what we're going to do, what the names of these files are. Now let's just copy them. As I said, we could do the import directly from this directory, the flash drive, but let's create a new directory as we'd planned. We've created our repository under MiniTeam Workbooks in a folder called MiniTeam Input and a further folder date time stamped with the time of creation. Let's pour our files from the flash drive in here. Now let's go and import the MiniTeam input to the master workbook. We'll click this button here, labeled Import MiniTeam Input, and navigate to the date time stamp directory where we put those MiniTeam workbooks. So we're at the appropriate subdirectory now, and I'll highlight what you can plainly see, or maybe it's what you can't see. There are no files visible in here. That's because this is a folder browser and not a file browser. The import utility is just going to take whatever the contents of this folder are and pull them into the master workbook. But I often find the fact that you can't see the files to be a bit disconcerting myself. And if it makes you feel uncertain, here's a trick. Separately, bring up our target repository in a file browser for comparison. I feel better now. And we're off consolidating. Okay, the MiniTeam inputs have been synced. It was there where we put that illustrative information. Let's go check. And there it is, our input that showed specific practice 1.2 is being not yet implemented, and our note reading for illustrative purposes. So now the MiniTeam inputs are synced in the master workbook.